Hey, welcome to the Shelley Studio, and this is part 2 of my process on how I created my Fly Me to the Moon art book. Part 1 was creating the jelly prints, which I will link in the description box below in case you haven't seen that one and you're curious of how I created those. I do want to say this is a process video and not necessarily a tutorial or how-to. Because that would just take way too long. I will link, I believe Carrie the Crafter has a good example, and I will link his. I believe his is a tutorial. His is the one I followed, I believe, for instruction. So I will link his video in the description box below if you want to know how to make a book like this. I think that's the best place to go. Yeah, anyway. So I am taking 2 8.5 by 11 sheets of cardstock. Oh, make that 3. Well, the 2 I score, and then the third one I just fold in half. And it's going to create the book. And, I will describe what I'm doing, because that's just how I am. I'm not good at telling stories and rambling on, so, but these 2 thicker sections are going to end up being pockets, so I'm using my Memory Keepers, I think it's Memory Keepers, envelope maker to create the divot. So I didn't want the half circle, I wanted the kind of curvy thing, so this is how I'm doing it, and I just cut out that little section with a knife, and I do that to both of those. And then I'm going to figure out which way that's supposed to be glued on, and glue that on. So it's going to have a back spine and a front spine, and hopefully enough stuff in between to keep those spines full. And I'm just using glitter glue to glue those on. I know I have the measurements somewhere, but like I said, I'll link a video tutorial below so you can follow it if you want to make a book like this. So this is my first one. This is the Earth and the Moon, and I'm trying to figure out, I want that moon on the front because the theme is Fly Me to the Moon. So I'm trying to figure out how best to do that. I think I decided to go with this, and I decided that the spine that's on the left, I will use fabric or something so it won't need to go all the way to the edge, and that will make it so I can keep my moon and what I have of Earth. Again, I'm double, triple checking. I don't have a spare, so I want to make sure it's right before I get going, before I cut it. Right? You know how that is? Measure twice, cut once. Yeah. And I just attached this all with a glue stick. So this project was part of a video hop. It's PM Artist Studios collaboration, and for the hop I just do a walkthrough of the book. So that'll be linked below too, so you can see the walkthrough, the flip through of the book. You'll see everything here, but if you want to watch that, you can. And then inside that has links to everybody else's Fly Me to the Moon projects, so you can check those out if you haven't already. So I'm just making sure that's good and stuck, and I measured and I trimmed it down, and it's wrong the opposite way. So I think the paper stretched when I glued it. Or it was a little curled up when I measured the first time. I don't know. I'm just doctoring up some areas that were a little too white on there. And I let that dry. And the next part, I am going to do that single sheet that I folded in half. I'm going to put Saturn and Jupiter on there, and again just using a glue stick. I did pre-fold it, but I will, once I get these both glued on, I will let it dry and then I will gently fold it again. And it actually worked. Like, I was afraid that it would crack the print, but it did not. It might be due to the fact that I used Hippie Crafter paint and it's really plasticky. So it stretched just fine. But you do want to do that after it's completely dry, because otherwise you'll get puckering in the folded areas. And I'm being very generous with the glue. And I am using Yoo-Hoo glue stick. I really like that one. I liked Elmer's Extreme, but it's not the same anymore. They don't do the Elmer's Extreme. There's a little bit of space where I didn't get it quite. There we go. Got a few wrinkles, but if I keep rubbing, they'll go away. And I'm putting that under some weight. Now we'll mess around with this for a little bit. And I'm going to glue that. That'll be the back of the book. And like I said, I'll just do a fabric spine, which will cover up the blue cardstock. And I decided I like the idea of a fabric spine. I wish I would have done it on the front and the back. Just because, you know, paper gets folded out over and over and over again, it's going to wear out. I think the fabric helps keep it from wearing out so much. Or hold it together when the paper's falling apart, the fabric's still there. So this next piece is the pocket. So I decided I would get that ready to go before I put anything in or glue it down. So I've got my little, the surface of Mars. Deciding which way I want it to go up. I am using 100% recycled paper. And it happened to be 3-hole paper. So I've got to doctor areas that will stand out. So I'm just dipping my finger in each of the different kinds of paint that I used to make that print. And just going for it. There we go. Almost disappears. The one thing I didn't take into account was the divot that I had already made. Probably should have glued the paper on first and then made that little divot. But I think I end up just cutting around it after it's dry. And now I'm deciding on the next section. Another one of my gel prints. This one you can really see the stencil. I used, well, it's a mask. I used Nested Circles by PM Artist Studio. Actually just one, and I flip-flopped it on the gel plate as I brayered over it to get that interesting texture. I decided my Jupiter needed a full spot like Saturn has, so it's going on the the middle sheet. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm like flitting things around, trying to decide what I should do next and where it should go. Sorry, that was a lot of just messing around with things. I could have taken that out, reduced this by about 5 minutes. No, I don't know if it was that long, but... Alright, so we're just going to glue this on, and all that flipping around and then trimming the other picture, I forgot to pay attention to which way was up on Saturn. So I currently have Saturn upside down. And so Jupiter is going to be opposite. Jupiter is not quite so noticeable. I know in most pictures that storm is down at the bottom, you know, that circle thing. I think that's what it is a storm. But I could research that. Find out for sure. That's just something I remember from a long time ago, and that might not even be true anymore. They might have thought that at one time, and it's different now. Just like dinosaurs are different now than when I grew up. There's no Brontosaurus, I don't think. They call them different names now. Anyway. Pterodactyl. Is pterodactyl still called a pterodactyl? Okay, so here we go. I googled it. The most prominent surface feature on Jupiter is called the Great Red Spot. What a name. It's a cyclone, a whirling storm 3 times as big across as the Earth. Much of the energy of Jupiter's weather appears to come from a very slow contraction of the planet. Okay, so it is a storm. It still says it's a storm. Despite its great size, Jupiter spins very rapidly on its axis, going all the way around in under 10 hours. Oh my gosh, that is fast. Rotation causes the planet to bulge visibly at its equator. Did I make it bulge? I've never noticed in pictures that it was bulging at the equator. So I'm just putting some ink around there in case any of the white of the paper shows. That's all I'm really doing right there. Just wanted to have that out of the way. So I decided to go ahead and do the same thing with orange, since I happen to have some orange archival ink. Probably bought it on clearance like forever ago. So, yeah, now I'm gluing the pockets down. Now this is where, I think this is where I realize, oh, Saturn is upside down. How am I going to do this now? So I make sure Saturn is upside up. And we're just going to glue it down that way. I held those down, let them dry. And I decide I'm just going to add another pocket on this side. Yeah, and then a pocket on the back. That's why I wasn't worried about those holes on that particular piece. Also just trying to decide what I want to go there. It's all a lot of fiddling and playing around and deciding what I want to put in what location. I was really excited at the results of my gel printing. I thought they turned out pretty cool. But if you look carefully on some of them, you can see stuff showing through. But that's okay, it just adds to the interest. This time I'm gluing this on before I put the little divot in for the pocket. I guess I decided on that paper for that particular pocket. Alright, so I'm going to let those dry. I did put them in. Sorry I didn't show you the gluing of that one, but we'll glue this one on. Not that you need to see every step, right? If I'm not explaining how to build it, you probably don't need every step. But I did glue the little strips on for the flap. And then I'm going to round the corners. I like the rounded corners on the flap. Less likely to ding them up, right? Okay. So there's the basic construction. But there's a lot of space in there, right? So we got to fill up that space. Now in Carrie the Crafter, I couldn't think of his name for a minute. In his, he put a signature of sketchbook paper or something like that. And so I photocopied my gel prints on my printer, inkjet printer, and I was going to turn those into a signature and just throw them in there. But they were so dull compared to the originals that they just looked sad. So I decided I was going to have to do something different. So I decided I would put a couple of inserts in there The first one is this one, where I'm cutting a circle out. I do not have a die cutting machine, so I have to do it by hand. And I have this little cutting tool that's supposed to rotate, but yeah, I have to have an angle on it to get it to go. I haven't used it very much. And yes, I got it on clearance. Either at Hobby Lobby or Michael's, I don't know which. So I thought I'd try playing with it to make this circle cut. I think I trim it up a little bit with scissors. But for the most part, that is it. There's my circle. And I decide inside the circle I'm going to put a star. So I'm just freehanding a star. I kind of like that. It's not perfect. It's a little uneven. But I'm going to make both stars match, because I'll have that hanging, like suspended inside the circle. So I have to have a front and a back to the star. So once I cut out the front one, then I'm going to trace it onto the other scrap circle piece. And we'll cut it out again. And I just noticed you can probably hear some humming in the background. That's a fan. It's really hot in here, so I do have a fan going. And I'm going to just use this black thread. Figured black would be good and not too noticeable. I'm tying a little knot. That's just to give it some traction in between so that it doesn't slip where I glue it. I don't know, it was a theory. I figured that might work. And I didn't tie a tight knot. It's a loose knot. It could have been looser, but it's a loose knot. And I probably get a little excessive on the glue. Because I'm going to put a little bit... Oh yeah, I'm taping it down so it will stay straight. There we go. Just put a little bit over the thread there and squishing that down. And yeah, I have a lot of excess glue. It's okay, I just want to make sure. And I'm going to paint it. It's going to be painted silver, so smearing it on there does not matter. So now it's dry. And I've got, it's supposed to be really shiny, but I think it absorbs into the paper. I do a couple of coats to get it to look a little bit more shiny. And of course I do both sides. It's kind of shiny. Alright, so before I suspend it, I can't have this dull piece of cardstock in my bright, shiny papers, because they're kind of a little bit glossy. So I decide to just take some of the paint that I'd been using and brayer over the cardstock. Well, it's still kind of dull, I must admit. And this is not the... Well, I like the effect of the brayer. It's just not... doesn't give you as much coverage. You know, you might want more coverage. So I'm using ultramarine blue and... I don't know, there's two different shades of blue going on there. So I got that covered, and it still seems kind of dull, right? So I decide to gel print on it thinking that would make it more shiny like the regular paper. So I just brayer it out, and then I'm going to print on both sides. So print the first side. Just experimenting, trying to see what will work. It's a little shinier. So now I'm throwing some more paint down. And we'll do the other side. Kind of shinier, but weird, right? So it's still weird. So I decided to pull out nested circles and kind of just sort of stencil with them, like sponge stencil with them. The color is not standing out that much, so it's really not all that noticeable, but it gets better. Like, I do that for a while. What you do in one place, do in the other place, even if you don't like it. Creates a balance, right? And it's just background layers for future to build upon in the future. Yeah. So I decided to pull out a different blue and got started before turning on the camera. So this one's a lighter shade, and it's standing out a lot more, and I like the results after this one. It looks like it's really bright and obnoxious, kind of, I think, when you see it overall, but folded in half and stuff, it's not that bright as it looks here. At least I don't think. Like, I don't have the book right here with me, so I can't, like, open it and look. But, no, I like how that turned out. So now we've got to put the star in. So I'm just taking it. I'm going to add... I was going to put this blue tape on there, but then I remembered that's painter's tape, which is not permanent. So I pull out my permanent tape here. So this yellow tape is permanent. And I'm just going right over it and right over the glue. And then I'm going to glue, well, then we have to sew it in like a signature before I glue it shut. So that's set aside to dry. And this is actually what I'm going to use for book cloth to cover the spine. It's just a piece of brown fabric. It's got a little bit of paint on it already from, I gel printed on some fabric a long time ago. And this is just a scrap that was left over. Didn't have much of the print on it. So these are acrylic inks. I'm not worried that they're going to make the fabric stiff. I want the fabric to be stiff. This isn't book fabric, it's just regular material. So, yeah, I'm not worried that it gets hard. And with the acrylic inks, you don't see it, I don't think, but I do blot it a bit because that was a lot of paint. So I did blot it. Now, this piece of paper is cardstock. It was left over from trying to do a print with it. So I if you haven't seen the gel printing video, I drew the circles in pen and then did pulled a print with it to leave the lines. And this is what was left over on the cardstock that I was using. And this is also 100% recycled paper. And by that I mean it was used for other things. The other side, you will see, I believe you'll see, is got paint on it. So, I'm not sure if I show that or not. I can't remember if I have footage. But I keep adding paint because I want this to be darker and darker. More like, you know, outer space. And that is the moon, of course. So I just keep adding paint, and I'm running low on that particular bottle of paint. That's okay. I feel like I've accomplished something when I've emptied a bottle of paint. Because I keep buying paint on clearance. I have way too much paint. Which is not, it's not all the best paint, but you know. Oh, I think I've already painted the other side, so you don't see me paint the other side. I stencil it and stuff to make it interesting on the inside. So yeah, that was a quick view of the inside. I used a little bit of metallic paint for the circles. That was fun. So I'm making pockets on either side, and I do end up sewing it. I don't make you watch that because the glue wasn't staying. It wasn't holding up. So, and I've got these almost ATC size cards just cut up from gel prints. And I'm going to put those both in like signatures. So I'm going to sew them in. And have I made the marks already on the spine? I can't remember. Okay. So I'm making marks where I want them to be so that, you know, they're evenly spaced. But that's as measured as I get. So I'm finding the approximate middle. I put that on there to hold it. Then I line it up to the marks, center it top to bottom, and then stab it through. And I'm just doing a pamphlet stitch for this. And using my pokey tool for the top and bottom holes. And hopefully it's all straight when it comes out. I think it ends up being pretty straight. So, going down through the bottom, and we're going to go back up through the same hole we started. Go back in there, get back in there. And then you just make sure one thread's on either side of the string and tie a knot. So yes, the thread will be on the inside. I could have done it on the outside, but it was much easier and didn't have to think as hard to have the thread on the inside. So I'm going to do the same thing with my other one. I can't remember if I left this in or not. But this is going to go in same way. That's why I haven't glued it together. And this one, it doesn't matter because those two sides are going to be glued together to make one page. So going to the outside from the center. Finding my hole that I poked already. Going back out through the bottom. Back in again through the center. Alright, so now I'm going to glue these two things together. And I didn't think about my threads hanging out on the star. I could have totally tucked those in. I just shut it. Closed it and let it dry. I I trim those afterwards. I realized that I hadn't done it, and I just trim it off after it's dry. Oh, nope, not even waiting for that. There, they're trimmed. Okay, so now we're going to put the faux book cloth on the spine. And I just want it to go, I think it's about 1/4 of an inch. And at this piece, I had to trim the crooked bits off. It is just barely the right size for the gap that I have left. So I put this on. I thought it was pretty straight. Slightly crooked. So when I do this back side, which you'll see, it barely comes to the edge of the blue paper. And this would probably be better. I think I'm using Bearly Art glitter glue. No, I don't have that one yet. I'm using the glitter glue, but a wetter glue, because the glitter glue is pretty stiff. It's fast drying and it's pretty stiff. Something like an Elmer's or whatever might be a little bit better. But see, you can see it's like so close to the edge there. I may have to, at some point, put a decorative element there. Maybe we'll also put some trim on this spine or something. But just getting a good coat of the glue. Stretching it as much as I can to get it to cover that back area. And there we go. Now the last thing I do was decide on a closure, a way to hold that flap down, because it doesn't stay down by itself. So I decided to do some paper stars. I painted them with that silver. I don't think I have a lot of footage of it. So they're hand-cut stars, painted them silver. I glued them onto a string, and then I added brads to hold them in place. And then I made a star at the bottom as the part for the string to wrap around. And that's what I end up creating. So I know this has been a really long video, and if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed watching me try to figure out how to make this book. I'll get some pictures taken, put them at the end of this so you can see the pictures. If you want to see it flipped through, the link to my walkthrough of it and the Makers Creative Collab video hop will be down in the description box below, so you can check that out. It's really short. It's like 6 minutes. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this. Please leave me a comment or a thumbs up. Thank you all for watching. Have an awesome day.